Hello Internet, and welcome to my review for Fairy Tail episode 281. When we last left our heroes, Natsu, Lucy, Happy, Carla, and Wendy learned from Juvia that Gray had gone missing around 6 months ago. This caused Natsu to remember that future Rogue had told him that Gray would kill Frost, which led the then not-so-future Rogue down his dark path into villainy and killing Sting and all the shit that he pulled. And so they left Wendy and Carla there to care for Juvia because she's the healer. And they went to Sabretooth and found that Rogue was going to take care of this group called Avatar that Natsu just kind of assumed Gray was a part of, I think. But he turned out to be right because Gray had joined up with the Zareth cult. And the gang arrived at Avatar's castle, and that's where we left. That's where we left off. Alright, so, this episode was not stellar. It's kind of indicative of the rest of the arc. This is by far my least favorite arc in Fairy Tail. It's just not very good, and we start to see the things that will become full-blown problems later on. And the first big one is its awful tonal shifts, which starts at the very beginning of the episode with actually one of the better tonal shifts this week. The rest of them don't work at all. This one only kind of doesn't work. And that's, Lucy, Happy, and Natsu are all getting ready to, infiltrate Avatar. And so Lucy summons Virgo to dig them in. And she shows up already, tied up as, a self-punishment masochism thing. And it's not very... It's kind of... The tonal problems of this arc kind of lead Avatar to be kind of a joke in a way that the story only sometimes wants them to be. And this kind of starts off with our big, Avatar invasion episode, opening up with a random gag about Virgo. The tone very quickly shifts from intense, shonen butt kicking to a comedy sequence in a way that Fairy Tail normally does pretty well. But not at all in this arc, as we'll see later on. But before they invade, before they, do the little dig thing to infiltrate, Lucy goes Star Dress, and we get a nice little continuity nod that Natsu actually does not know about the Star Dress yet. Because, as you'll recall, Natsu and Happy, Shelia, I always forget her name, Shelia had already taken Happy to go with Wendy and Carla to go fight Blue Notes and the Orochi Fin team, and Natsu had followed after them while Lucy stayed behind when she used Star Dress the first time. So yeah, it's a nice reminder that it's a nice little continuity nod that not everyone knows everything, and that's hard to remember at times, and it's nice when the show reminds us of that. But then they arrive at the Avatar basement, which is some kind of torture room. And as Lucy and Happy are playing sneak around and try to find Gray, Natsu, being Natsu, just shouts Gray's name into the void, and it works. So take that what you will. I like that for the most part. It's just very Natsu. And if you're a fan of the show at this point, you love Natsu. You kind of have to. But that shouting does awaken the rest of the Avatar members. The first one who shows up is this little fuck named Abel, with a Mr. Kersey that he had gotten from Kind Hikaru sometime after the Grimoire arc. I had actually thought that Hikaru had died with Hades at the end of that arc. We have a lot more to say about Hades as we move forward, though. Don't let me forget. Not this week, but months from now. I've had a theory about Hades for a long time that I've never quite had the opportunity to say. And when the anime gets there, I'm so going into it. But that's neither here nor there. Hello, ADD. My meds have worn off. Anyway. Abel having Mr. Kersey gives us a nice little connection to Tenro. If he did anything with it, anything significant, because Natsu just beats him over the head and he's down. And that kind of brings us to the problem with this arc in general, is how big pushovers these guys are. Natsu bops Abel over the head and he's down. He has a brief little fight with Gomon, I admit. But even then he still wins in fairly short order. I will admit, Abel and Gomon do get up. They keep fighting once Gray shows up. But, then there's the robot guy, D6 I think is his name, who has one of the better designs in Avatar. But Natsu beats him back without even like thinking about it. And there's no like the other two get up eventually. D6 stays down. He's dead. He just got beat by Natsu in one hit. And I get that a lot of the point of this arc is to show us how far Natsu has come since Tartaros. That doesn't make it good, though. It's not a good... You shouldn't be showing us your protagonist just wiping the floor with everyone, while also, like, the showing Natsu whooping Orochi Finn's ass worked. Because Orochi Finn was kind of a one-note villain. They just kind of showed up, and then they left. Avatar, however, is kind of hyped up. And, you know, it's to the credit of Mashima's brilliantly functional hype machine that I'm not just, like, bored of Avatar at all times, and that their hype always works, because Mashima's really good at making good hype for villains. But again, it's just, which makes it even more of a letdown when Natsu beats their ass. And we will see this more and more going forward into Alvarez. This kind of is never quite as bad as it gets in Avatar, but into the final arc, we will see the same kind of like really good setup and lackluster landings, which is kind of all throughout the series, but it's really big in these last two arcs, especially this one. But you know what? The first three Avatar members may have been really lame, but I'll give it this much. Gray's entrance is pretty cool. You know, when he walks in, like, the demonic music is playing. It's all really cool. And Gray comes in, tells them, like, his allegiance to Fairy Tail is gone. He, like, opens up his shirt. Look, the mark is gone. It's been, like, covered by the Demon Slayer markings. We see the Avatar mark on its place. And then Lucy is like, what the fuck? You know, we've been friends. Did that mean nothing to you? And you know, I love a good get off your emo high horse speech a lot. It's one of my favorite. People telling emo people to shut the fuck up is like a favorite thing of mine. But Lucy's speech to Gray just didn't really work. There was something about it that felt kind of flat, I guess. Maybe it was the acting, maybe it was how pointless his arc is, I don't know. But anyway, after that, Gray and Natsu fight for a little bit. And then Mary, another Avatar member, shows up. And she, like, gets some kind of ceiling on Lucy immediately, at which point, Gomon and Abel reveal themselves to not quite be passed out. And Gomon, like, shackles Natsu with some magical sealing stone. And Abel just, like, Mr. Kersey's happy around. It's actually a pretty funny visual, even if it is kind of not that important. But after that, the gang is locked up by Avatar. Gray has his whole speech about, I'm with Avatar now, get the fuck out of here. And then we cut to Gajeel, Lily, and then Levi, where we find... So last week, Avatar was talking about how it seemed like there was a spy in their ranks, and they were all, like, suspicious of Gray. And in more Mashima trying to convince us that Gray is evil, we find out that Levi is that spy. And so I'm going to jump ahead a bit here to talk about some quirks of adaptation. So, as I recall, the Levi being the spy scene was in a different chapter than, as we find out at the end of the episode, this was all an undercover mission by Gray. And I think those were in two separate chapters, which kind of like allows us to be like, oh shit, Gray isn't the spy, it's Levi. Is Gray actually evil? And by having them, so maybe if instead of making the spy thing a mystery, which it seemed like the writing doesn't really want it to be, the writing wants us to know that it's not Gray, they should have had Levi revealing herself as the spy to Gajeel and Lily maybe last week, but then last week's episode ended with Gajeel and Lily showing up, so maybe that wouldn't have worked, I don't know, but that just kind of, though maybe not making it a big deal is for the better, because evil Gray is not really that good a plotline. It's just kind of forced. I'll get into that in a little bit. Let's handle this, the prison sequence, the torture scene. So the first thing is, once they wake up, Natsu wonders where Virgo is. This is kind of a nitpick, question. And Lucy reveals that the seal stone is close to her gate, and so Virgo has gone back to the celestial spirit world. But wouldn't that also cancel out her star dress and leave her back in her normal clothes? I feel like that makes more sense, but whatever. That's an intense nitpick. And then Gomon shows up, and this is not a nitpick, because he has this, like, really embarrassing, Zeref fanboyism, where, like, he says he's cosplaying as Zeref when he's clearly not, which leads into some of my complaints last week of another problem with Avatar being that they just don't know who Zeref is whatsoever. Both that he's not a god, he's just a man, who's been alive for a long time, and that, like, fuck, I was trying to thought. Also, they don't even know what he looks like. Gomon's outfit is nothing like Zeref's. It's, like, blue, and Zeref wears black, white, and gold. Anyway, just all of that include, even, like, there is a funny joke about, white people who get, like, Chinese characters on their arms. They're like, oh, this means courage or heart, and it really doesn't mean that at all. Like, that's a funny gag, but it's not good to... I don't know, it just seems... It's kind of random, for one thing. This isn't really a show that makes fun of the exoticization of Eastern culture. That's not something that Fairy Tail's really into, Especially given that Fairy Tail is such a westernized anime. In its setting, I mean. It's very, like, medieval Europe. I don't know, it's just kind of a weird joke to make. Especially given that, like, Gomon is one of the more Asian-sounding names in the series, except for, besides maybe, like, Natsu. But, like, the rest of the cast all has either actual European names, like Lucy or Makarov, or which is the Russian name, or like clearly European-inspired names, like is Urza an actual European name? I'm not entirely sure. I know Ezra is, but I've never actually heard of anyone named Urza. But Gray and Zeref, they're all kind of, and Mavis Mavis is an actual English name, but they're all kind of like based in European naming conventions, or European language conventions, or word conventions, or whatever you want to call it. It's not like this. I don't know. It's just, even beyond that, because that's entirely besides the point. It just makes it really hard to take Gomon seriously. He's a joke, and even when Fairy Tail's villains end up being kind of a joke, the show never treats them like a joke. And I feel like it's better for not treating villains like a joke, because it makes us actually be like, oh yeah, these are powerful villains. And even when they're, one-shot, there are a couple later on that are definitely in the one-shot line. It's just, I don't know, it just doesn't work at all. Very little about Avatar works. And then, of course, we have the torture sequence, which just seems like a bad fan service bit, especially once he gives up on the goat licking scene, which actually I think is a real torture, and it sounds really painful. That's actually a fairly good subversion, because like it makes us think, oh, goat licking is another joke, or foot licking is another joke, and then it's like, nah, it's a goat licking your feet off. Like, that's actually kind of serious, but then he drops the goat, he has the goat go away, and not only does he like lift Lucy up to, like, chop her in half, he also makes certain to, like, spread her legs out. And it looks very much like a sex pose, and it's just unnecessary. Her legs being spread out does not make her easier to chop in half. That's not how this works. Especially because he's chopping her in half, like, this way, and not this way. I don't know. The torture sequence, I don't know. But then Gray shows up and freezes Gomon, and then freezes off the seal stone, which is kind of weird, because I thought the seal stone sealed magic, but whatever. So yeah, Evil Gray was entirely an act. He appears to be able to control the Demon Slayer markings at will, as he has them recede, and of course puts his hair back down, or puts his hair back, I don't need the there. And we find out that his Fairy Tail mark is still very much there underneath the Demon Slayer markings. So yeah, it was probably for the better that Evil Gray was entirely an act, but it was still just a random, like, forced plot line to make us think that Gray might be evil when he's Gray. He's very clearly not evil. But yeah, he was working undercover with Urza the whole time, had this weird magic smartphone too that I don't think ever comes back again. So yeah, it's nice that the show lets Team Natsu be together for the final battle of the arc, which should be. And then, given the rate we're going, there are only 2 episodes left of this arc. The actual this episode ended on 429, and we've been having 3 chapters a week. And the drama of the arc ends on 435. The arc actually goes to 437, I think, on the wiki. 436 is the big plot revelations that will lead us into the final arc, and 437 is kind of a talking about that's so much of a spoiler. 437 is it's an epilogue to the arc, as well as a moving into the final arc. So yeah, we're just about wrapped up with the arc so far. But yeah, before this episode as a whole, oh boy, this episode. So as I've said just about all my final notes here already repeatedly throughout the review. The episode was just all over the place tonally. It would shift between, dramatic, tense, and then just light and happy on a dime. All while my train of thought, hello. All while trying to make us think these villains were intense, were serious threats, while actively undermining their threateningness. It didn't really work at all. Normally, as I've said, Fairy Tail manages to balance the fun and the tense pretty well. But it does this by having moments like this is a tense scene, and then this is a happy scene. This is a scene of the characters relaxing, and then here's the plot. But not here. And that all just kind of ties into my big problem with the Avatar arc. All of this kind of comes together to make Avatar just kind of a joke. And that's really the problem with the arc as a whole. It's just a joke that's not very funny. I admit I did get a couple laughs out of Natsu being them so bad, but in the end it didn't work really at all, and I'm looking forward to this arc being over, because once we hit the end of this arc, we have some bonkers revelations that really do shift the world of Fairy Tail in dramatic ways that I really some English voice actors actually spoiled the big reveal before the anime actually got that far. I'm not going to tell you which English voice actors, because that would give it away, but I'm not happy about that. Not happy at all. But yeah, that's really all I have for Fairy Tail 281. I initially thought that once we got to this point, the anime would slow down and flesh out the Avatar members so we could, for one thing, fill out the fall core with Avatar, but it's not doing that. Avatar will be done by mid-November, probably 2 more episodes, and after that we can move on to the good stuff. I know people give the last arc a lot of crap. I think the last arc, I'll say, I'll go into some more detail as we get into the arc itself, but I think it's kind of the amalgamation of both the best and the worst in Mashima's writing. But I think it's still a lot of fun. We'll have a lot of fun during Alvarez. There's not a lot of fun to be had during Avatar. So I'm going to leave this video off here. Hope you all enjoyed the episode more than I did, and the video. If you did, feel free to drop me a like, subscribe, or do whatever the fuck you want. I don't really care. And as always, people, keep kicking ass, and I'll see you in the future. Bye!